Carl Jung said modern man is sick, not because he's weak, but because nobody ever told him when he stopped being a boy. Every culture before us had a moment. A line. You crossed it and you were different. We deleted that. And we're paying for it. Separation, the forced removal from comfort, is the biological trigger for identity formation. The Satirma tribe of Brazil makes young men wear gloves filled with bullet ants for 10 minutes. The pain is rated a 4+ on the Schmidt Sting Pain Index, the maximum. Soldiers describe it as worse than being shot. But here's what's strange, the boys don't cry out. Because the ritual doesn't just test pain tolerance. It makes the pain mean something. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz and wrote that men who had a why could endure almost anyhow. The bullet ant gloves are a why. Psychologically, this is called identity disruption theory. When your environment is forcibly removed, your comfort, your routine, your sense of self, the brain enters what researchers call a plastic state. Neural pathways reorganize. The old identity literally cannot survive the new information your body is processing. Separation isn't punishment. It's the operating system update your brain needs to run the next version of you. The ordeal, not the achievement, is what actually rewires self-concept. Marcus Aurelius didn't become the philosopher emperor because he read Epictetus in a comfortable library. He wrote meditations on campaign, in a tent, while managing plagues, betrayals, and wars he never wanted. The Stoics had a practice called voluntary hardship, deliberately living below your means, fasting, sleeping on the floor. Seneca did it regularly. Not because life demanded it. Because he knew that if you never practice suffering, suffering owns you. Modern neuroscience calls this stress inoculation. When you expose yourself to controlled adversity, your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis recalibrates. Your cortisol response becomes more precise. You stop flooding. What used to trigger panic becomes data. The ordeal doesn't just prove you can handle things, it physiologically changes what handling things feels like. You aren't pretending to be braver. You are neurologically closer to calm. The witness, someone who sees you cross the threshold, is what makes the transformation stick. Kierkegaard wrote about the leap of faith not as a private moment but as an act that required authenticity in front of existence itself. Look at the Masai Moran warriors in Kenya. After surviving alone in the bush, the young man returns to the village. The elders name what he did. They say it out loud. The community receives him differently. This isn't ceremony for ceremony's sake. Without the witness, the man goes home and his mother still makes his tea and his uncle still calls him by his childhood nickname and the transformation dissolves like it never happened. This is social identity theory meeting attachment neuroscience. Human identity is partly constructed through reflection. We internalize how others see us. When a trusted witness, a mentor, a community, names your new self out loud, it activates a different consolidation process in memory. The experience moves from episodic memory, just a story you have, to semantic memory, a fact about who you are. The witness isn't validation seeking. It's the final step in the code compiling. The return going back changed is where most modern men fail to write. Camus wrote about Sisyphus and told us to imagine him happy. Not because the boulder doesn't hurt, but because Sisyphus knows the mountain. He owns his struggle. The failure mode for men today is the retreat. You have the hard experience, the breakup, the job loss, the health scare, the depression, and then you go back to your old life and act like it didn't happen. You don't integrate it. Nietzsche's Übermensch isn't a superhuman. It's the man who took the suffering and made it his, who went back into the world with it woven into his identity instead of hidden in a drawer. Integration is where the psychology gets serious. Unprocessed transition trauma, experiences that disrupted your identity but were never meaning made, is one of the strongest predictors of arrested development in adult men. Frankl's logotherapy shows that the mechanism is narrative. You need a story where the suffering did something. Where it was part of a becoming. Men who write or speak about their ordeals show measurable increases in coherence of self-concept. The return isn't going back. It's arriving somewhere new wearing the old address. You can architect a modern rite of passage and it will work the same way the ancient ones did. Schopenhauer believed will was the fundamental force of existence, and that meaning came from directing it consciously. A 30-day hard physical challenge, a solo trip with no phone, learning a skill that makes you look incompetent for 6 months, a year of financial constraint by choice, these are not hobbies. If you treat them as ordeals with a beginning, a difficult middle, and a deliberate return, the neurological and psychological machinery of initiation activates the same way it did for a Spartan boy in the Agoj or a Lakota youth on a vision quest. The components are not cultural. They are structural. Separation. Ordeal. Witness. Return. That sequence is older than any civilization that practiced it. The research on this is from developmental psychologist Robert Keegan and later built on by clinical work on adult transitions. What activates transformation is not the content of the experience but the structure, the severance from a previous self-concept, sustained discomfort, relational recognition, and narrative integration. Your brain does not care if the discomfort comes from bullet ants or 5 a.m. training. It cares that the sequence is complete. Most men today experience plenty of separation, loss, failure, disruption, but skip the ordeal they choose, skip the witness, and absolutely skip the return. They accumulate broken initiations and wonder why they feel unformed. Here's what we covered. 1. Separation from comfort is not a punishment, it's the neurological precondition for identity change. 2. The ordeal you choose is more powerful than the one that happens to you, because chosen suffering has built-in meaning. 3. You need a witness, someone who sees the new you and names it, or the transformation won't consolidate. For most men fail the return, they have the hard experience and go back to acting like the same person. 5. You can build this deliberately. The architecture is separation, ordeal, witness, return. That's the sequence. It worked for 10,000 years. It still works. The question is whether you'll use it. If this landed for you, subscribe, we drop one every Tuesday and Friday. Dark Mind. See you next time.